What is up, guys? Welcome back. We got a special episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show for you guys tonight. It's Saturday evening, so hope you guys are enjoying the weekend here. I just got back from golfing. It was a beautiful, beautiful summer day here in the Midwest, and we're going to just hang out for the next hour or so. We're going to do a little Q&A live stream. We got Harris here, and I know Harris is going to have a ton of questions for us. We're going to do our best to answer them, but I kind of wanted to just open it up for the evening and just talk fantasy football, man. Whatever questions you guys have, please file them into the comments. I'm going to just kind of start off by reading some of the news that I thought was noteworthy. So if you guys do want to get your questions answered, please start loading them into the chat. I'm just pulling up the Roto World player news. We got a couple of weird things going on here in the news. Trey Harris still not signing. So these second round players are not really signing their contracts yet. I think he's going to be fine. I do expect Trey Harris to mix in there as the number 2, number 3 wide receiver. He's got to compete with Quentin Johnston, Mike Williams, and hey, good evening, Mr. Tony. Hope you're doing well, my man. Beautiful. It's an absolutely beautiful Saturday evening here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I hope everyone's having a good night. But I do like Trey Harris as a sleeper. He's a guy that I think you can put on your bench in fantasy leagues this season. We got a note here on Kenny Pickett developing a strong on-field report with Jerry Jeudy. I'm kind of coming around to Jerry Jeudy maybe being like Jerry Jeudy is kind of like the Jakobi Meyers type player where he's going to be targeted a ton. You know, I know David Njoku's there, but I think whether it's Joe Flacco, whether it's Kenny Pickett, whether it's Shedeur Sanders, whether it's Dylan Gabriel, I think Jerry Jeudy is primed, to just rack up 7-8 targets per game and be a guy that maybe doesn't catch a lot of touchdowns, but man, if he catches 80 to 90 balls this year, I'm not going to be surprised. So a sneaky player here, Jerry Jeudy. And again, I don't really care who's his quarterback. We've seen a lot of good fantasy receivers be able to score points with poor quarterback play. And I'll have you guys note, if we look at this, I'm going to go over here to ESPN and pull up some stats because I was kind of shocked at this. Like, I'm just going to prelude it. Where do you guys think the Cleveland Browns ranked in passing attempts last season? We're going to go to team here, and we're just going to look at team passing leaders. And the team that threw the most passing attempts last year, it's your Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns, man. 661 passing attempts. And now we're going to see probably 4 quarterbacks play games for the Cleveland Browns this year. For sure 3. Whether it's Flacco, Pickett, and Sanders, we'll see if Gabriel can get on the field. But this team, not a good team. They're going to throw the ball a lot. The volume is going to be high. The efficiency is going to be low. But a team that throws the ball the most in the NFL, I'm kind of interested in. So, Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku, I'm very interested in that. And then this is just another reason why I really don't like drafting Quinshon Judkins this year. We're going to look at rushing attempts here, and we just saw Cleveland was number 1 in passing attempts last year. I mean, they were, I don't know what this is, 32, 31, 20, 30, 29. They were 28th in rushing attempts last year. This is not a team that's built to run, and I think they're maybe a year away from Quinshon Judkins maybe being a good pick. So for this reason, I think starting this Q&A off with the Cleveland Browns here, I'm leaning into Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku being good picks at ADP right now. I think Quinshon Judkins is probably a bad pick at ADP right now. And Harris is going to start unloading some questions on us. Unsure about some players. Let's talk about Joe Burrow. I just put out a video last night, guys. I'm going to pull up my other Google Sheet here because I'm going to be continuing to upload. I have 3 more videos in this series, but I was interested in looking at last year's guys that finished in the top 12 at their position. So QB1s, running back, receiver, tight end. So the question is, what makes a number 1? And this was the quarterback numbers last year. Let me actually undo that a little bit. So Joe Burrow, fantastic player last year. He was QB2 last year. But there's some red holes here in his game. He does not run the ball a lot. And I think if you are expecting him to come into 2025 and lead the league in passing yards again, over 40 touchdowns, these are not very sticky numbers year to year. So I think it's very easy to predict his numbers to come down. The good news is he's being drafted as like QB 4 or 5 off the board. I think it's Lamar, it's Josh Allen, it's Jaden Daniels, and Jalen Hurts. Like those are the top 4 QBs. So there is a good chance that Joe Burrow can still salvage a top 5 QB season. But I think there's some heavy risk here because he's not going to run the ball a lot. And that does concern me. Basically 92% of his production came from passing numbers. And I think in the modern NFL, you want some of these guys that are going to be running the ball. So I'm more, and hey, I appreciate that, Tony. We're going to be, I'll probably preview a couple of the other ones here tonight, but the running backs, receivers, and tight ends, those are going to be coming. But I found this very interesting. And I'm somewhat nervous about Joe Burrow. If we just open up my projections real quick here, I just want to see. And don't get me wrong, man. I think the Bengals are going to throw the shit out of the ball again. They're going to probably be one of the leaders in passing attempts. I think they were number 2 last year. I have Joe Burrow as my QB 5, but because of that rushing upside, and I think it's almost a damn near guarantee that he's not going to be able to produce those passing numbers that he did last year. So that's coming down. There's not a lot of rushing upside. I don't know if I see Joe Burrow hitting the ceiling at this point. For him to be QB 5, when I draft the 5th QB in a redraft league, I want that QB to have QB 1 upside. And I think it's clearly these 4 guys: Lamar, Jaden, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. Like those are the guys that I'm more comfortable betting on. If you start your draft with Jamar Chase or T. Higgins, I think it's more interesting to go after Joe Burrow. But I don't know if I buy Joe Burrow being a big hit at ADP. I think there's other values that I like that could finish higher than Joe Burrow and also have that rushing floor plus passing ceiling. So I'm kind of lukewarm on Joe Burrow. I think the Bengals offense is going to be good this year. Their defense is going to be really bad, which is going to help them, light up the scoreboard. But I think I get a little nervous about the guaranteed regression coming for Joe Burrow and some of those passing numbers because he had a career last year. And usually when a guy has a career year, you don't really want to, buy into that. This is a really good question here. Bo Nix. You guys will know, like I'm pretty low on Mr. Bo Nix here. Bo Nix had a great rookie season. Let's pull up these numbers from last year. Bo Nix was QB 8 last year. He had a great season, 29 passing touchdowns, 12 interceptions. This is one of those guys where, again, if you watch that QB1 video, his rushing numbers, like these are what I'm looking for. 92 rushing attempts, 430 rushing yards, and 4 rushing touchdowns. Like that alone, I really almost don't care what his passing numbers are because that alone qualifies him to be a quarterback 1. Where I get a little bit nervous about is he's kind of a dink and dunker, and that worries me just a little bit because you're going to have a guy that's going to throw the ball, short yardage, A-dot kind of stuff. And they didn't really improve their receiving core all that much. They added Evan Ingram, which could be a nice boost. And I do like the addition. Like their running game, I think is going to be a lot better this year. So to me, Bo Nix, as good of a year he had last year, I think that's kind of his ceiling. And he's kind of being drafted in this range as well. So he's not really a guy that I see that has top 5 upside. For me, when Bo Nix is available in ADP, I'm looking at Murray, Mahomes, Herbert, Purdy. I think those guys have a little bit more ceiling than a Bo Nix because I just don't think Sean Payton's going to open it up and really let him throw for 35 touchdowns. But I do think Bo Nix is a very safe quarterback. If you wanted to wait and say, hey, I'm going to grab Bo Nix as the QB 10 off the board, something like that, I think that's fine. But I don't see top 5 upside with Bo Nix unless maybe he runs hot on rushing touchdowns or something. So kind of the same thing as Joe Burrow, where I think he had a really good rookie year. There's a lot of guys struggle in year 2 too because they have a lot of tape on that player's rookie year. You have some good defenses in that division as well. A lot of these coaches are watching all that Bo Nix tape right now. So for me, I'm gonna just lower Bo Nix just a little bit in my rankings. Mr. Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon was solid last year. If you look at his numbers, he averaged 14.5 points per game in a well, let me go to PPR here. All right, so you got Joe Mixon, RB17 on the year. He averaged 17.2 PPR points per game, though, which was very nice. Like, he qualified as a top 10 running back in fantasy football, and he only missed 3 games. I think Joe Mixon has never really been a guy that stays healthy. He's kind of a violent runner. He's only had a few seasons here where he's played the full amount of games. So I think projecting him for 14 to 15 games does make sense. We know he's a very good runner. He's a volume runner. The Texans want to feed him, and the Texans want to throw him the ball as well. So I like Joe Mixon. I think Joe Mixon is fine as a running back too. But the issue that I have with him is he's being drafted a lot higher than that. I have him here as RB21. I'm just going to pull up the DraftKings ADP because that's it is best ball, but is a full PPR contest. And I tend to lean into full PPR contests. So let me go over. I just want to pull up this ADP here. So he does profile as a low-end RB1. On DraftKings here, he's actually pretty valuable. He's got a 57 ADP. I think when we do our ESPN drafts, he's a little bit higher. I actually like this value of him as being a late 5th, early 6th round pick. He's kind of the same thing as James Conner, where every week I know I have a chance at a top 5 running back. And last year we saw a lot of veteran running backs, whether it was Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, a handful of other guys, Josh Jacobs. We saw a lot of these older backs perform very, very well. So I do like Joe Mixon. I also wonder just a little bit about the Texans maybe throwing the ball a little bit more this year. They were very unhealthy at wide receiver. Nico Collins missed time. Stephon Diggs blew the ACL. Tank Dell pretty much died. There was a lot of issues with the receivers staying healthy. And for that reason, I kind of view the Houston Texans as a team that's going to rebound as a passing unit. And Joe Mixon's still going to get the volume. But to me, he doesn't have that top 10, top 12 upside that I see. They also added a couple running backs, whether it was draft and free agency. Nick Chubb's there. So he's not really a target for me, but I do think that he is a reliable RB2, or if you get in trouble in your draft, I think I'm fine clicking him. But overall, I'm not super, super excited. And Aiden, good evening, my man. We're doing fantastic. It's a beautiful Saturday evening. I got some golf in today. Did a little shopping today. It was just a beautiful Saturday evening. Saturday whole day, really. So we're doing great. Hope you're doing well as well. Garrett Wilson or Marvin Harrison Jr. Let's take a look and see what these guys did last year. And it's kind of hard to look at what they did last year because we have half a season of Garrett Wilson by himself and then half a season with Devontae Adams. So I think his outlook this year kind of lies somewhere in the middle of those two outputs. And I think Justin Fields, man, if we only have to go back to 2022, and Justin Fields put together a season here. Where is he? Justin Fields was QB 10 that season. He threw 17 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. And we have DJ Moore here. Where is Mr. DJ Moore? Was DJ Moore on the team then? Let me look this up real quick. 2022 Chicago Bears. Let's look at reception. So they did not have DJ Moore there yet. I thought he played a season with DJ Moore. Was it? Maybe I'm thinking 2023. Let me go to 2023 here. There you go. We have one season with Justin Fields being able to deliver a wide receiver one season. He had 96 catches that year. DJ Moore did over 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns, even had a rushing touchdown. He led the team in targets that year. I think that's that's a pretty reasonable ceiling for a guy like Garrett Wilson. And with Marvin Harrison Jr., like, we were super excited about him last year, but they seem to really struggle to get him involved and consistent throughout each game. So he ends up finishing as wide receiver 30, which, he did not pay off draft capital. Only 116 targets is not great. And he stayed healthy pretty much all year. He did have a concussion in one game, but they left a lot of meat on the bone for Marvin Harrison Jr. I think when it comes to who's going to score more touchdowns, I think the question is easily Marvin Harrison Jr. But if it came to receptions and targets and yards, it might be Garrett Wilson. So I think Garrett Wilson's going to be a little bit more consistent, a little bit more steady for you week to week. He's going to have lower touchdowns, maybe 5 or 6 touchdowns in that range. But Marvin Harrison has that potential to, one, take a second-year leap, be more involved in the offense this year. So I think the ceiling of a Marvin Harrison compared to a Garrett Wilson excites me just a little bit more. I do have Marvin Harrison here as my wide receiver 16. If I scroll down just a little bit here, where is Mr. Garrett Wilson? Did I miss him? I got Garrett Wilson here at wide receiver 31. So I'm probably a little cool on Garrett Wilson. I think I'm going to take the swing on Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he's got more working for him into year 2. He also looks like really fucking yoked up. I don't know if you've seen a picture of him at his press conference, but he looks bigger. I think just year 2, things slow down a little bit for you. I expect him to be more of a possession receiver. I think I'm going to take the swing on Marvin Harrison Jr. Man, this is a great question, Aiden. Jordan Love or Drake Maye? I have both guys ranked very, very highly in my projections. If I look at these real quick, Jordan Love's coming in at QB 12, Drake Maye QB 14. So they're pretty much in the same boat. Drake Maye is going to have that nicer rushing upside every week. I don't really think that they did a good job adding for him, for weapons. I think this team wants to run the ball. If we're being honest, we're going to need Drake Maye to be ultra efficient, kind of like that Ryan Tannehill season a few years back with Mike Vrabel, where he's running hot on touchdowns, big yards per attempt, things like that. So I think it's going to take more efficiency and things to break right for Drake Maye, where Jordan Love, we know Jordan Love can do it. We saw him go on an absolute tear at the end of 2023. If you look at these numbers from about, we'll call it week 10 on, Jordan Love was one of the best fantasy quarterbacks in football. Now, the big difference here is Josh Jacobs is there. They're going to run the ball a little bit more. And last year, they ran the ball out of necessity, I feel. You have Jordan Love nursing a bad knee injury. You have receivers being inconsistent, dropping passes and things like that. But I do think Jordan Love offers a safer profile. So I'm going to lean Jordan Love here. I also like what the Packers did. They invested in offensive line. They brought in a first-round wide receiver. You have Jaden Reed, year 3, Romeo Doubs. Romeo Doubs is playing for a contract extension too. And then I do think adding a guy like Luke Musgrave back, who was a big part of their success at the end of 2023. He was stretching the field and doing a lot of nice things. I think the Packers are probably going to end up passing the ball a little bit more than we saw last year. So I'm into Jordan Love. And if you really look at it, man, last season, let's go to the ESPN numbers here. 15.2 points per game for Jordan Love last season. That's kind of his floor. If we look at Drake Maye real quick, and don't get me wrong, Drake Maye I thought looked pretty damn good. And I do think his rushing upside is pretty exciting. Where is Mr. Drake Maye? QB 23 last year. He averaged 13.3 points per game, but that's kind of skewed by these last couple games here. But for the most part, I don't see Drake Maye having that massive ceiling where he can throw for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. Jordan Love has that. What Drake Maye does have going for him is the rushing upside. So both very close. And you know what, dude? Aiden, in drafts, you can get both guys. You can get both guys and just walk into your season with 2 QB1s for really cheap. Harris is saying Omarion Hampton. I think. Well, first of all, did you guys see the news on that bum Najee Harris? That guy took a firework off the face or something here. Sustained a superficial eye injury during a fireworks mishap. So there you go. if you guys have watched my stuff, and I know a lot of you guys have been, watching my things for a few years, like we don't like Najee Harris. I don't think Najee Harris is a good running back. I think he's entering his twilight of his career. He's kind of just an Elliott level replacement at this point, where he's just a warm body. He can get the 3 to 4 yards per carry. He's not going to get you a lot of work after those yards. But he can be a bruiser. He can do some nice things. But the point is, I'm not nervous about Najee Harris. I think Omarion Hampton, when you take a first-round running back, and we can go back and look at all of the history of the first-round running backs taken, usually you want those guys on your team. And then when you think about, we're talking John Harbaugh here. We're talking a team that wants to run the ball. You look at the rushing attempts last year. The Chargers were, amongst the top in the league, but we're talking Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, 2 injured veterans. I think when you draft a guy like Omarion Hampton, you're going to want to see what he can do. And one, I think this Omarion Hampton plug into this offense, it's going to make the offense better. They're going to be out there for more scoring opportunities. So I'm all the way in on Omarion Hampton. He's creeping up in ADP on DraftKings here. He's a 44 ADP. But I think you could argue that, you're looking at a guy that's going to catch 50 plus passes in this offense. He's the best pass catcher on the team for running backs. And I do think he's going to be the best running back on the team too. So to me, it's all kind of lining up. I think the 4th round ADP, if we, just close our eyes and kind of imagine it's summer 2026, Omarion Hampton is going 15th overall. He's going up here with Devon Achane and Jonathan Taylor. Like, I could see Omarion Hampton being a round 2 pick next year. So he's the type of player that I'm willing to bet on. And again, first round running backs, I think that's a good profile. Bucky or Ashton Jeanty, I think Bucky can do some really nice things. But to me, it's almost like a guaranteed thing with Ashton Jeanty, where we know, their next best backup is Raheem Mostert. We're talking Pete Carroll here. They're going to want to give Jeanty as much touches as possible. And then not only is he a first-round running back, but he's a top 10 pick running back. So you're probably locking in 300 touches here. I don't think Bucky Irving is built to handle that many touches. I do think Bucky Irving is going to be a very good and efficient player, but we just saw a note too. I think Tristan Wirfs, their best offensive lineman for Tampa Bay, I think he's going to miss part of the first part of the season. I gotta find this here. He's going to miss at least the first couple games of the regular season with a knee injury. So we're losing kind of our best offensive lineman here. And not only that, but he's our left tackle. So that does hurt the Tampa Bay Bucks a little bit. I'm also just a little bit nervous about Tampa Bay. You have an aging Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. I think Tampa Bay is probably due for a little bit of regression in terms of efficiency. Whereas I think you want to bet on one of the best running back prospects we've seen in a very long time on a team that's run by Pete Carroll. And we know what Pete Carroll has done in the NFL and at USC and things like that. I think you take Jeanty. But I will say, when you can get Bucky Irving as your RB2 in drafts, I think that's a pretty good positional value. And all of a sudden you have maybe the best running back 2 amongst your entire league. For Bucky Irving to finish RB14 last year, for him to really not get the starting nod until maybe October, it does look really good. And this is the guy that can catch 3-4 passes per game, big chunk plays here, but he's not really a volume guy. Only 2 games where he was over 20 carries. He's probably going to be 15 to 18 carries per game, something like that, where I think Jeanty, every week, man, you're getting 20 to 25 touches out of Jeanty. We got Garrett Wilson 1 spot higher. So I think if we just talk about the Jets for a second real quick, I think the Jets are going to be exciting. I do think Justin Fields can lead a team to 9-10 wins this season. They have a solid defense. They have one of the best running backs in the NFL. To me, Breece Hall is one of the best picks on the board right now. You can get Breece Hall here on DraftKings at pick 36. Pick 36, like, he's better than Kieran. Just, from a talent perspective, he's better than Kieran, Chase Brown, probably Josh Jacobs, maybe Bucky. Like, Breece Hall is a first-round talent player in terms of fantasy football. And I just think adding Justin Fields is going to make this run game really wicked. So to me, when I draft a Jet, I want Breece Hall first. Where Garrett Wilson's being drafted, he is pretty cheap, but I take Marvin Harrison. I even like Devontae Adams, Jackson Smith, and Jigba probably more than Garrett Wilson. So that's how we lean with the Jets. Whew. Man, you guys know me. I'm a Packer guy. I've never really had Justin Jefferson on any of my fantasy teams before. I usually just don't click him. Last year, I faded Justin Jefferson pretty hard, and that didn't really work out for a lot of my best ball teams. Justin Jefferson's arguably the best receiver in the game. I think him and Jamar Chase are 1 and 2. You guys can figure, whatever way works for you. I do like Justin Jefferson a lot. I think the camp reviews out of the Vikings camp so far are really, really good for JJ McCarthy, but he's a rookie quarterback. Sam Darnold was a veteran quarterback. So even in a friendly quarterback offense that Minnesota has, it's a lot like bumper bowling for quarterbacks. I think there's going to be some huge games for Justin Jefferson, but there's also going to be some low lows. Whereas my guy, Brian Thomas Jr., man, I think we're just scratching the surface with what he can do. Outside of Jamar Chase, Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, there's not too many guys that I can see finish as the wide receiver one. I think Puka, Neighbors, I don't think Amon-Ra St. Brown's there. I think Nico can do it. I think Brian Thomas can do it. And I think Drake London can do it. But man, we got a unbelievable season out of Brian Thomas Jr. last year, and he played half of it with Mac Jones. So ceiling wise, I do think, Aiden, that Brian Thomas Jr., his ceiling is way higher. I think if you're drafting, 3rd, 4th, 5th overall, I don't really feel great clicking on Brian Thomas Jr. that high. I'd rather be at, 6, 7, 8 to collect Brian Thomas Jr. If you have the ability to select one of those spots, I would do it. Because I do think, I think Brian Thomas Jr. scores more points than JJ this year. I think that's definitely possible. But if I'm picking 3rd, 4th, 5th overall, I'm a little bit nervous about doing it. But man, the ceiling there, wide receiver 5 last year, and we're not all far, in between the two. So I think a huge season for BTJ. And by the way, and since we're quick talking about the Jags, did you see? I'm sure you saw. You probably get these things emailed to you. You probably get letters from the Jags in the mailbox. But our boy Travis Hunter here, expect an offense-heavy start for Travis Hunter, which I think makes sense. Mix him in on defense. He doesn't need to be your CB1. He needs to be that guy that rotates in there on obvious passing situations and the guy that you trust. But he is their second best offensive weapon. You need him on the field. We're back into Travis Hunter. To me, this one's not close. I think if you're playing PPR, you want Jerry Jeudy. We're talking about a guy that's going to probably have 130, 140 plus targets. I don't think I can see George Pickens getting that volume, but I do see George Pickens catching more touchdowns. If Pickens catches 8 touchdowns this year, that's going to lock him into probably a top 25 wide receiver, which feels pretty good. But you're going to have those inconsistent weeks with George Pickens where he goes, a lot of weeks he's going to go 3 for 52. Some weeks he'll go 5 for 88 and 2 touchdowns, stuff like that. So his variance is going to be huge. Whereas Jerry Jeudy, and I don't know if you were here when we talked about the Browns led the league in passing attempts last year. Jerry Judy's going to get 7, 8, 9, 10 targets per game. And it doesn't matter who the hell the quarterback is because they're going to have to throw the ball. So if it's full PPR, give me Jerry Jeudy. If it's half PPR, I might be inclined to go with the touchdowns. So I do like George Pickens with Dak Prescott. And my man, I've golfed maybe 4 or 5 times in my life. I finally just bought my first set of clubs last week, the Amazon Prime deals. But I went to the driving range this morning and then just went to a local course this afternoon. I'm golfing tomorrow. I just turned 33. I had my 33rd birthday last week, and it's time to get into some golf. So it's, even if you're not good, man, it's still not a bad day hanging out on the course and just enjoying. All right. Random post. Good evening. Hope you're doing well. What round should I draft QB in a 13-team PPR? Interesting. A 13-team PPR. So does that mean like one team gets a bye every week? That's interesting there. I think, and Mr. Random Post, I want to say thank you for hanging out with us on this Saturday evening. We do live mock drafts every Wednesday night. And I think this will be my 10th Wednesday in a row coming up, where we kind of just keep waiting for quarterback one to fall to us. I really like waiting for QB one. Obviously, if you can get a top 5 QB at a value, I'm totally all for that, especially if you can like stack a guy. That's kind of fun. But we have this like huge tier. And basically, I'm going to say, I don't know, this Jared Goff to Brock Purdy tier. And if I look at the fantasy points per game, I'm seeing 17, 16, 17, 17, 18, 18, 18. And then it jumps up to all these guys being basically 21 and above. So you have this huge tier of guys from about 6 to 14. And all these guys can go off any given week. They can get you 16, 17, 18 points per game. That's kind of the sweet spot for me. So I'm looking for those guys that run. So Bo Nix, Kyler Murray, Pat Mahomes, Justin Herbert. Brock Purdy ran the ball a ton last year. He's one of the guys on my list. I think a lot of people are sleeping on Jordan Love because he just couldn't really run last year with that knee injury. But Jordan Love qualifies. CJ Stroud qualifies. I do think even Drake Maye down here for sure qualifies. If I'm in a 13-man league and I'm drafting QB, I'm going to be one of the last guys to draft a QB, and then I'm probably going to draft 2. Aiden had a great question earlier. Love or Drake Maye? I think my answer is both at this point. Wait and see what happens. And then you know what the end game is? The end game is Trevor Lawrence, man. I think you're talking about a guy that's got a huge upgrade in weapons. We're getting BTJ year 2. You have Travis Hunter. They brought in Diami Brown, who I like as a deep threat. You got Brenton Strange. You have passing running backs galore. Travis Etienne, LaQuint Allen, Bashal Tutin, and then Liam Cohen too. So I'm waiting for 2 quarterbacks. So I guess what round should I draft a quarterback in? I don't know what round. I guess it really depends on where you're drafting. If it's Yahoo, ESPN, what ADP round. But I kind of want to be the last guy to draft a QB, and then I'll draft 2 of them. If I came away with, say I caught a falling Justin Herbert and even a Caleb Williams, because he's going to run the ball a lot. He rushed for almost 500 yards. Didn't get any touchdowns, but he's going to run the ball a lot in that offense. But give me any duo of basically, this huge chunk in blue. Give me Mahomes. I guess if you draft Mahomes or Kyler Murray, you probably don't need a QB2. But if I can get Herbert and Trevor Lawrence, if I can get Purdy and Jordan Love, CJ Stroud and Trevor Lawrence, I'm feeling very good about that. And hey, good evening to Charlene. Don't get fooled about the Browns. I think the way you get fooled about the Browns is drafting Quinshon Judkins in the 4th and 5th round. I think that's how you get fooled by the Cleveland Browns this year. We're talking about Quinshon Judkins. And DraftKings ADP is actually pretty reasonable. He's going at pick 75. But at that point, give me David Montgomery. Give me Aaron Jones. Give me Isaiah Pacheco. Maybe even give me Tony Pollard. I bet Harris over there is probably taking Brian Robinson Jr. over Quinshon Judkins. So he's one of the guys that I just don't see it. I don't see a receiving profile here. We're talking about a team that's going to rank bottom 5 in rushing attempts and probably top 5 in passing attempts in 2025. So with that being said, if Jerry Jeudy is slipping in your drafts, if David Njoku is slipping in your drafts, I'm just going to click on the volume because those guys are going to be getting volume in 2025. And I think that's the perfect answer here on the Jordan Love, Drake Maye. You guys, I'm a Packer fan, but I'm in love with this Packers opportunity in 2025. I think a lot of people are going to expect them to come in and hammer with Josh Jacobs, but if we get a healthy Jordan Love and when Jordan Love's healthy and he can move the pocket and do some damage with his legs, and all of a sudden you add in a first-round talent like Matthew Golden and just get some developing players as playmakers, I think the Packers offense has a ton of weapons. They have a good defense behind them. It looks really good for Jordan Love to be a top 10 fantasy QB this year. And I do think Drake Maye is going to get there. I think he's going to be a top 10, top 12 QB as well. But you're going to have those weeks where, to me, the signs clearly point New England wants to run the ball. They brought in Travion Henderson to complement Ramondre Stevenson, and they brought in offensive line help. They have a defensive-minded coach. Give me Jordan Love pretty much every day. Charlene, drops, I don't think drops matter. Drops are not a stat that I see sticking year to year. Jerry Jeudy probably led the league in drops because he had 145 targets. He caught 90 of them, though. That's still a very good clip. He went for 1,200 yards, only 4 touchdowns. I bet he catches more than 4 touchdowns this year. He was wide receiver 16 last year. And if we're looking at the wide receiver numbers here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Rashee Rice, wide receiver 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Jerry Jeudy's not in the top 30 of wide receivers here. He's barely in the top 40. Jerry Jeudy is a click for me. He's a top 30 fantasy wide receiver that you can get outside the top 30. I'm taking Jerry Jeudy over Jennings, Odunze, Godwin, Debo. Yes, even over Travis Hunter, over Calvin Ridley. I think Jerry Jeudy belongs in that Devonta Smith, George Pickens, Zay Flowers, Jalen Waddle tier. I'm taking I would bet Jerry Jeudy finishes over Xavier Worthy, Cortland Sutton. Let me just see. Am I crazy here? Do I have Jerry Jeudy ranked even this high? I mean, I got him at wide receiver 26, and I'm kind of lowballing him here, I feel. But I absolutely love the Jerry Jeudy upside. I think he's a guy that belongs in our draft plans. And Charlene, I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters how many catchable passes are coming from the Browns. When you have a team that's going to lead the league in passing attempts, that's a number that I want to bet on. And again, we can't, outside of Myles Garrett and a couple other guys, we really can't name some defensive players for the Browns. Their quarterback play is going to suck, but it's also going to be a reason why they lead the league again in passing attempts. And if they don't lead the league in passing attempts, they're probably top 5. So to me, it's simply a numbers game. It's a volume game where it might not be pretty, but Jerry Jeudy's going to get his targets. And yeah, I think Bucky is going to ball out as well. If you want to start your draft, say you start your draft with, that Brian Thomas Jr. start and you come back with Bucky Irving round 2, I think you're feeling really, really good about your running back 1. So we're definitely signing off on Bucky Irving being a guy that could be a top 5, top 10 running back this year. And yeah, so for me, when I think back about the leagues where I've had the most success in a given year, I'm usually hitting on a quarterback that's being drafted outside of the top 5 that I think can finish out, inside the top 5 this year. So to me, if I'm looking at quarterbacks that are being drafted outside the top 5 that can easily finish top 5, yeah, it's Mahomes. I think they're going to throw the ball this year. I think Kyler Murray, he could just run hot on a lot of things. Trevor Lawrence. I don't know if Justin Herbert's top 5 this year, just the passing volume is going to be low. I think Baker Mayfield can get there. I think Dak Prescott can get there. I think Jordan Love can get there. I think those are a handful of guys that I really like drafting right now. Jordan Addison. I think that dude's got a jury trial this week. Let me double check here. Yeah, so I think there's a good chance that Jordan Addison gets slapped with maybe a 3 or 4 game suspension, Harris. And if he does get suspended, he's going to plummet in ADP. If it's 3 games, if it's 4 games, even if it's 2 games, he's going to lose ADP value. So we'll see what happens with Jordan Addison. I think he's a very, very, very good receiver. He's one of the best number 2 wide receivers in all of fantasy football. But he's probably more of a flex play for us. If I'm looking at, terms of ADP, he's actually pretty cheap. He's down here around him. You have Jakobi Meyers, Khalil Shakir, Stephon Diggs, Ricky Pearsall. I don't hate clicking on Jordan Addison. I think, at 74th overall, and I'm just looking at DraftKings here, I'm going to go down to the running backs here. I'm usually clicking on a lot of the running backs in this range, whether RJ Harvey falls or Montgomery or Aaron Jones. I also like a lot of the tight ends in this range, whether it's Sam Laporta falls, Travis Kelce falls. I like those guys. And then look at the quarterbacks here, because we kind of talked about guys being drafted outside the top 5. Pat Mahomes, Baker Mayfield. Like I like a lot of these players. So I don't know if Jordan Addison is going to be part of my redraft plan. I think he's a really good best ball pick because he's going to be inconsistent every week. You have Justin Jefferson, and not only that, you have TJ Hawkinson back this year, a full year removed from his bad knee injury. I think TJ Hawkinson is probably the legit option for number 2 targets on that team. So I think I'm taking Khalil Shakir over Jordan Addison. I see Shakir leading this team in receptions, targets, yards, and probably receiving touchdowns again. He is think of Khalil Shakir as one. He's just the best receiver on Josh Allen's team. He's going to catch 5-6 passes per game. He's not going to light up the scoreboard, but you're going to feel good about him as your wide receiver 3 pretty much every week. And if I look down here, Khalil Shakir, wide receiver 37 last year, which I know is not the best, but 12.2 points per game. He's a guy that I can depend on. And look at, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 games under double-digit PPR points. I don't really love clicking on Khalil Shakir in a best ball format because he's not gonna catch 8, 9, 10 touchdowns. He's just not. He did have a nice rookie. He did have a couple touchdowns sprinkled in his big season here with this 15 yards per catch, but he's not going to be a touchdown guy. He is an ideal PPR redraft wide receiver 3. I think Jordan Addison's best ball for us. And I think a lot of people shouldn't handle fireworks, especially, prestigious football players. So fireworks, not safe, man, but it's fun. And yeah, I think that's the best way to look at it. Najee Harris is just this year's Gus Bus. I don't think we're ever going to see Najee Harris really be fantasy relevant again. I think if you like Najee Harris, you got to look at some of the advanced metrics and things like that. He's just a backup at this point. So I think Najee Harris could pop off for some touchdowns. If Omarion Hampton gets injured, maybe we're liking the volume with Najee Harris, but I'm probably not clicking Najee Harris a lot this year. Jakobi Meyers, man. I think Jakobi Meyers is one of the most underrated receivers in all of football. I think he's just a good player. He was wide receiver 20 last year. And that was, playing with a bunch of scrubs at quarterback. And, 14, 13 PPR points per game over the last few seasons. He's a safe and steady guy. And I think, if this is his floor, he got 1,000 yards last year with Aiden O'Connell and whoever the hell else they put out there at QB. Geno Smith's an upgrade. No matter how way you slice it, Geno Smith's an upgrade. And that's 87 catches, 130 targets. That's with Brock Bowers catching 111 balls last year. So I think Jakobi Meyers is a pretty safe deal. If you miss on Ashton Jeanty in the late first round, you should probably highlight Jakobi Meyers, because I guess if you miss on Jeanty round 1 or Brock Bowers round 2, you should probably make it an effort to go get Jakobi Meyers on your team as your wide receiver 3 or 4. And yeah, we've talked about it a few times. I just don't know if it makes sense. But when I use the term positional advantage, Bucky Irving, I think most people would agree. Bucky Irving's a top 10 running back, meaning he's a running back 1, right? But if you start your draft with Jahmyr Gibbs, and then you can get Bucky Irving as your RB2, you get 2 RB1s. And then you just got to hit on your receivers, of course. But your RB2, Bucky Irving, is going to be better than anybody else's RB2 in the league. And assuming Jahmyr Gibbs is Jahmyr Gibbs, you have one of the best running backs in the league too. So getting that positional advantage where, whether it's Bucky Irving as your RB2, or you can sometimes get Brian Thomas Jr. as your wide receiver too. If you start Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., like that's a huge positional advantage. So that's one way that I like to build my drafts and think about constructing my roster. Why do I have something projected to do really bad, but then I like players off the team a lot? Or let me unpack this here. Why do I have something projected to do really bad, but then I like players off the team a lot or draft on that team a lot in best ball? I guess I would need more context here, Harris. Like for me, if I think about a team, like I have Quinshon Judkins projected pretty bad. I'm looking at Quinshon Judkins down here as my RB30, and a lot of people have him as a top 20 running back. I think he's a bad click. But then the other side of the coin is I like those receivers because that's how I view that team. I view the Browns as a team that's going to pack the small chunk and throw the ball a lot. I also think that, like the Jacksonville Jaguars, I don't want anything to do with the running backs. I don't think we're going to have fun having Tank Bigsby, having ETN, having Bashal Tutin. I don't think any of those guys are going to be fun to own this year, but I like Brian Thomas Jr. I like Trevor Lawrence. I like Travis Hunter. I like Brenton Strange. So I guess the way to think about this is you're projecting some players badly, and that might be fine. But then you got to think about what's that team going to do really well, or what's that team going to have to do a lot. If they're a bad team, they might have to throw the ball more. If they're a big running team, they're not going to have to throw the ball as much. I think about the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's a team that's going to have to run the ball a lot, and I don't think they're going to be very efficient as a passing team. So I don't draft a lot of DK Metcalf, and I don't like the Steelers offense at all this year. I don't like Jonnu Smith. I don't like Pat Freiermuth. I don't like DK Metcalf, but I'm open to those running backs. So that's, you kind of have to take a stance on a team. And that's why it's kind of good to look at it like Pittsburgh Steelers. I want the running backs over the receivers. I want the running backs over Aaron Rodgers. I guess if that helps. Oh, Dalton Kincaid, man. I just don't see it. I don't think he's a difference maker at the tight end position. I have him here as tight end 24. We're talking about a team, Josh Allen. Their best player is Josh Allen, and then it's James Cook, and then it's Khalil Shakir. We're talking about a tight end that has had 2 years in the league and just really hasn't shown us much of anything. Dawson Knox plays a ton. He blocks. He does a lot of the dirty work. Dalton Kincaid has had trouble staying healthy, and he's had trouble staying consistent. I just, if I want to wait for tight end, sure, I can draft Dalton Kincaid, but I'm going to want to draft another tight end with him. And I do think sometimes it takes tight ends a little bit of time to figure things out. I'm not writing off Dalton Kincaid completely, but if I draft Dalton Kincaid, I want to make sure I have either Colston Loveland or Brenton Strange or, Charlene's Darren Waller or Tyler Warren. I think Kyle Pitts, maybe Dalton Kincaid, that could work as a duo. But in no way am I feeling good about Dalton Kincaid as my tight end 1 going into the year. I think he's an ideal backup tight end. And yeah, Breece Hall, man. Breece Hall is a damn steal right now. RB 36 off the board. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13th. I think Breece Hall is a deal. And I have no issue. So I think Jamar Chase might be better. But for me, I like Jamar Chase's body composition better than Justin Jefferson. I think Jamar Chase is a guy that's kind of built like a running back. I really like Jamar Chase's game. But if it's 3rd and 12, man, give me Justin Jefferson. If it's second and 9, I'll throw to Jamar Chase and get some dirty yards. But I think Justin Jefferson is probably the best route runner and pure receiver in the league. But I really, really like Jamar Chase's game. I think we talked enough about Jerry Jeudy. Harris, if you have more questions on Jerry Jeudy, I can answer that. But I think he's a fantastic pick right now. And you don't have to like his quarterback. You don't have to like the Cleveland Browns. Look at what Jerry Jeudy did last year on the Raiders. He was the number 2 target in that offense, playing with some junk QBs, a team that didn't win the games a lot. Jerry Jeudy, Jakobi Meyers, they're kind of like a very similar player. And Jeudy caught 90 passes last year in this offense already. Now we're going to get probably 5 or 6 Joe Flacco games. You're going to get 5 or 6 Kenny Pickett games, and then you'll get some rookie QB games at the end of the year. But I think Jerry Jeudy is a guy that in redraft, you can get him as your bench player. And I think that's fine. JJ McCarthy. JJ McCarthy is probably not a guy that I want to go into my 1 QB leagues with as my QB1, but he definitely qualifies as a guy that can operate in superflex leagues. He's probably a guy that, hey, if he pops off the first week or two, you can add him off the waiver wire. So, like, I'm going to say I'm not drafting him in a 1 QB league, but for superflex, I do think he's one of those guys that, being drafted around QB 20, he could be a top 12, top 15 quarterback if he shows a little bit as a runner. But I think, growing pains, rookie season, he's in a great offense to learn how to play QB. But I'm not all the way in on JJ McCarthy yet. But for Superflex, I do like him. And BTJ did get a lot of points with Mac Jones, but the offense had a lot of growing pains because the first half of the year, they couldn't really run the ball. You still had healthy receivers, Gabe Davis and Christian Kirk. But there was a little bit of time here, and I think Trevor Lawrence got hurt in this Philadelphia game. But we saw some big games here, man, like a 21, a 23, a 20, 15. Like, he played a lot of good ball here. And then you see Mac Jones kind of enter, and Mac Jones, it took Mac Jones a little bit of time to really figure him out. But my point is, if Mac Jones can do this, and look at these targets, man. If Mac Jones can do this, I think Trevor Lawrence will be fine. Trevor Lawrence didn't target him more than 9 times in a game. BTJ, man, he is the truth. We got about 10 minutes left in the show tonight, so get your final questions in. We'll go for another 10 minutes or so. Yeah, man. And that's what's fun, man, about golf is all it takes is, you could be having a terrible day and you just hit that one shot, or you finally get that first big drive, or you hit a really nice chip onto the green, and then you're back, and it's just fun. So golf, man, I like that it works out your mind, it works out your body, and then you're usually with some friends, and it's just a good place to be. I think I adopted the Jags last year, Aiden, as one of my go-to teams. To me, I'm Packers number 1. My number 2, I think I had the Chargers in there penciled in, but I think I'm going to go Jags as my number 2 team, man. I love Trevor Lawrence. I think he's one of the most underrated players, and he gets a lot of shit for no reason, but they've had terrible management. They've had terrible coaches. They've had just a lot of shit that he's had to deal with, and now they're getting good players on his team. So I'm going to go Packers, my go-to number 1 team, Jags, Chargers, 2-3. I'm going to kind of pick up the pace here. I'm going to go Jaden Daniels. I think Jaden Daniels has a higher floor passing the ball, and he's got the same floor running the ball. Jalen Hurts will have more rushing touchdowns just because of the tush push, but Jaden Daniels is going to have way more yards. So give me Jaden Daniels. At ADP, give me Jaden Daniels. Swift or Judkins? Oh, do I have to? I don't want to take either of these jokesters. If I had to take one, if it's full PPR, give me DeAndre Swift. Judkins, he's what? We're going to get a guy that's going to run 12 to 16 carries per game. He's going to get 5 or 6 rushing touchdowns. If Quinshon Judkins is the second coming of Nick Chubb, I will gladly come back onto the stream here and take 4 shots of, I don't know, some shitty vodka, but give me Swift. Olave or Jameson Williams. If we're doing best ball, I'll take Jameson Williams, but I do think Chris Olave kind of fits that same mold as a Jakobi Meyers, as a Jerry Jeudy. He's just the best receiver on his team. He's going to lead the team in receptions, targets, yards, and maybe receiving touchdowns. I think Chris Olave, he's a talented receiver. He's had some concussions, yes, but he's also entering a contract year. If I'm right, they might pick up his 5th-year option. But I think Chris Olave is he's a glaring, rebound bounce back candidate that right now you can get Chris Olave for really cheap. I have to scroll all the way down here. Chris Olave, he's right next to Jerry Jeudy, which I think he's kind of the same player as Jerry Jeudy in terms of a fantasy profile. He's on a bad team. They're going to throw the ball a ton. I like Jeudy. I like Olave. I like Jakobi Meyers. I really like these guys because they're going to be volume. And Judkins was arrested for domestic violence today. What a knucklehead. All right, if you guys need any more evidence to not draft Quinshon Judkins, not only is he a bad fantasy pick, but he is a bad person. Harris, I really don't think it matters who his quarterback is. I don't think it matters. There's Quinshon Judkins in Fort Lauderdale. What a knucklehead. Oh, my goodness. All right, guys. Jerome Ford, best ball, round 18. Let's do it. Your 2024 quarterbacks for the Cleveland Browns, Harris, Jameson Winston, Deshaun Watson, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and Bailey Zappi. I think all 4 quarterbacks that we have this year for the Browns are better. So I think you have to just kind of remove the quarterback from the outlook and just say, hey, this team's going to throw the ball. And if they get a little bit better QB play out of Flacco, out of Pickett, out of Shedeur, then then Jerry Jeudy is going to be even a better player than he was last year. So I'm still going with Mr. Jeudy. Talk about Ray Davis. We're going to talk about a guy that I thought looked pretty good last year in spurts. We do have the James Cook holdout still. There was a couple games last year where James Cook wasn't going to play. And Ray Davis, I had a lot of questions, do we start Ray Davis in fantasy? And he had this amazing game. Where was it? I think it was this Jets game where he caught a bomb of a pass. He had 20 carries, 97 yards. He was just like a beast. I think he's a guy that if he consistently starts to get some volume, he's going to be a fantasy starter for us. And I do like he catches touchdowns. He's a good playmaker. I don't think he's going to be a startable asset unless James Cook is missing the game. But he's definitely a guy worth putting on your bench. He's entering year 2. I like to bet on those kind of guys. And, when he gets volume, you can see 20, 11, and 15. All those games were double-digit PPR points. So I think Ray Davis, he's a guy that I want to put on my bench. He's a guy that, if James Cook is messing around and missing more training camp and things like that, all of a sudden Ray Davis down here at pick 144. I'm taking Ray Davis over Rachaad White, over Jaden Blue, over Tootin. I think Ray Davis is kind of that discount Zach Charbonnet role, if you will. And yeah, Trey Harris is holding out of camp. I think they're going to figure that out pretty quickly. I think the Chargers rookies report next week. I don't think veterans report for another few weeks yet. So I'm not going to worry about a rookie's contract. They're going to figure it out and get him what he's worth. But as far as the Chargers passing offense, I think it's Ladd McConkey. And then number 2 is completely up for grabs. I don't think Mike Williams is going to be consistent for them. I think Quentin Johnston looked pretty good last year in spurts. But Trey Harris, man, we like his advanced metrics. We like what he can do in that offense. He could be a nice bench piece. And yeah, I think the Jags, man, I don't think the Jags are going to be a playoff team this year. I think they need one more draft, one more free agency period. And then maybe the AFC South is kind of whatever. We got a young Titans team. The Texans are probably the favorite to win it again this year. And who knows what the hell the Colts are doing. They're pissing away the Jonathan Taylor era pretty massively. But I think the Jags could be a team that takes a huge step forward this year, and they could be an 8-9 win team. Harris hates Chris Olave this year. I'd be curious why you hate Chris Olave this year. Because again, I don't think the quarterback play matters for guys like Olave, Jakobi, things like that. I think he's a damn good receiver, and he's going to get volume. He's going to get open. And hey, thank you to Charlene. Thanks for hanging out with us this evening. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday night. We'll see you on Wednesday night, I'm sure. And this is a great question, Tony. What if I told you I don't like red zone? I'm a guy that likes to watch a game and, see the ebbs and flows of the defense and all the notes and things like that. But for me, if you guys, so I used to watch football in this room last season. I have a main TV and then I'll pull up another TV. So I will have a second TV going, and that's where I'll pull Red Zone up on. So to me, I'm watching a game, whether it's the Packers or whatever other game that interests me. Maybe it's a Jags game, whatever. But I'll typically focus on one game on the main TV, and then TV 2 will be Red Zone, where I'm just kind of watching my guys catch touchdowns or the highlights or things like that. So I prefer watching a standalone game as my main entree, and then the side piece is Red Zone, where I'll watch the replays and figure that out. Harris has Zay Flowers as an avoid. I don't think we should be avoiding Zay Flowers. I think Zay Flowers at his ADP right now, man, DraftKings is pick 55. I'm probably taking Jalen Waddle over Zay Flowers, but I'm taking Zay Flowers probably over Pickens, over Devonta Smith. I'd rather have Zay Flowers over McMillan, Worthy, Sutton, maybe even over Jameson Williams, for sure over DK Metcalf. But I think Zay Flowers is a guy that's just getting better. And he's year 2 last year, and he did a huge improvement on all kinds of things. He does have this little bit of inconsistency to his game. He was wide receiver 25 last season, but we saw him go for 1,000 yards. His touchdowns were a little bit low. He's going to run the ball every now and then. But I think he's a playmaker, and he really only had a handful of bad games. But you're talking about being attached to one of the best quarterbacks in football. I don't think you can avoid Zay Flowers. I think you need some, especially in best ball, Harris, you shouldn't be avoiding Zay Flowers because he's got some big best ball games sprinkled in here. So I think he is a target. If you really think about it, Harris, every player is one concussion away from a season-ending injury. So I don't think it's wise to sway away from a Chris Olave. If he does go down with one more concussion, I'll eat that and I'll be fine with it. But I do think I tend to pick good players. That's what I'm looking for, and I do think Chris Olave is a good player, just with a little bit of injury history. What's your go-to beverage / beer while watching football? I try not to drink a ton of beer. If I'm drinking alcohol, I've kind of been on a vodka lemonade kick just because it just tastes good. But I don't really drink a ton of alcohol anymore. Back in the day, I used to drink all the craft beers and things like that. But my go-to beverage, so I have on Sunday mornings, I have weird rituals that I have to do. So on a Sunday morning, I have to make some kind of juice in my juicer, whether it's, some kind of delicious green juice or something like that. But I like to make a juice in the morning and get my day going off good with that. But I try not to drink during the day. If anything, I'll probably wait to have an alcoholic drink in the late games. But I'm trying not to drink until a little bit later, noon games, and then all of a sudden you're sleeping and things like that. But my go-to beverage, I don't know. Probably I buy the Simply Lemonade. I've been liking the blueberry with a little bit of vodka. That'll hit my spot. I'm not a big fantasy footballers guy. I think they're kind of all a lot of fluff. I know they have some good stats and things like that, but if they're telling you to avoid Zay Flowers, I think that's questionable. I mean, I don't think Zay Flowers is going to be a league winner, but I think at ADP, he belongs in our realm of players that we should draft. I mean, I got Zay Flowers up here at wide receiver 13. I do have him catching 7 touchdowns. If I were to lower that, that might drop him a little bit, but Zay Flowers is a good player. He's on a good team with one of the best quarterbacks. I think it's wrong to avoid Zay. And I'm curious what other people think. Do you guys have Zay Flowers as an avoid? I think for me, a mid 5th round pick, that's kind of what I'm looking for. A guy that I can put in as my wide receiver 2, but he's probably my wide receiver 3 at that point in the draft. Wide receiver 3 flex. I think he's just the same as Worthy, Jameson Williams. I think he's a fantastic player. Matt says I took Omarion and Mika and Burden in Dynasty. Sounds like you had a lot of first round picks. I'm not super into Burden. I think he could get lost a little bit in terms of targets. I think he's the number 4 target this season. But in the future for Dynasty, I do think he can step in and be that number 2, number 3 guy. But I think for this year, it's going to be a little bit of growing pains. Okay. So I'm a black coffee guy. My wife has recently, we bought one of those little espresso kettles that you put on the stove, and so I'll make her espresso in the morning, and I'll have a shot of espresso, just black. But I like Lavazza. I have a French press. I guess that is my go-to beverage, but that's not really while watching football. I guess if I'm going to sit down, if I'm thinking about it, Packers are going on. It's a noon game. If Packers are playing at noon, I might indulge in an alcoholic beverage. But otherwise, I don't know. I'm a Dr. Pepper guy if I want a soda, but I drink the zero sodas for the most part. So fun questions here. We're getting to know each other. So this was a good question. I guess my question, the go-to food, like what's your go-to Sunday food? I bought a Ninja pizza oven, and that thing is fun. It gets up to 700 degrees. It takes about 20 minutes to preheat, but you buy the dough, you make your pizzas, and then you can start zipping pizzas out. It takes 3 minutes to cook a pizza, and they're little personal sized pizzas. But that's one of my favorite things to do on Sundays. About 11:30, I'll get done doing a live stream or whatever, and then I'll go down and start getting some pizzas prepped. That's been an enjoyable little part of the ritual too. So I try to hit the gym when I can. 2 seasons ago, I lived at an apartment where I had access to a gym, so that was part of my routine. I just bought this house last year, and I'm working on the basement. I just remodeled the basement. I got to figure out how to finish the gym yet. So that would be a routine. We do have a Planet Fitness nearby that I might hit up. But my morning routine is usually to get out, get up at a good time between 7 and 8 o'clock in the morning, start doing some coffee. We'll go for a quick walk or something like that. I'll make a juice when late morning. I start to look at the news a little bit, around 9 o'clock, and start looking at that stuff. I start to look at DraftKings and things like that. I look at the weather early in the morning, and then we'll do I think I do a 10 a.m. live stream on Sunday mornings. So we'll do that, and because I think at 10 o'clock, that's when the inactives lock. It's always, I think, 2 hours or maybe an hour and a half before the game start. So 10:30. So 10:30, we'll do that live stream. And then basically from 11 to 12, I'm either working on DraftKings lineups or talking to people. Like I get a lot of phone calls from friends and family and things like that in that witching hour between 11 and 12. So I'm doing a lot of questions and stuff. And honestly, like I've been doing this for a long time. I hate answering start sit questions. If I'm being honest, I hate it. Cause then, it's like the stuff that keeps you up at night. Like on a Sunday night, if I told someone to start Zay Flowers over Jameson Williams and JMO goes off for 122 touchdowns, like that's what I'm thinking about. Like I'm thinking about all of the bad calls that I had throughout the day. And it sucks. Sometimes it's really rewarding, but it's the ones that I get wrong that really, really eat at me and keep me up at night. But yeah, Sunday routine. I don't like to go anywhere on Sunday. I do all my stuff on Saturday. So Saturday is like whatever my wife wants to do. We're going to go do that stuff. And then Sunday, she's real cool about just hanging out and watching football. So that's the Sunday routine. And then let's see, we got the noon games going. And then the afternoon games, that's when I start to if you guys have checked out the fantasyfellowship.com, I log all the games every week and I show you guys the snap counts, all the data from a game. So I start to get to the computer and start, logging that data. And then I try to wrap that up by Sunday Night Football. So, but good 2 to 3 hours of, watching football and then having the computer work. And then Sunday Night Football is usually just, okay, let's just watch a Sunday Night Football game and enjoy the night. Burgers, beans, and potato salad. Sounds great. Yeah, pizza is that's my guilty pleasure. I would say if I had to eat one food every day for the rest of my life with no consequences, it probably would be pizza. And then just having a pizza oven down in the garage is it's a luxury. And yeah, so Sundays we'll go live in the mornings. I do want to get more content out this summer yet for you guys. So if you haven't checked out that QB1 video that we talked about earlier, check that out. I'm going to be doing a running back video, wide receiver, and tight end. So I'm going to start getting into some more, more of the nerdier deep dive stuff. So this was fun. If you guys like this video, like we can probably do a couple more of these throughout the summer. And this video, like shout out to Harris. Harris and I used to do this the last handful of summers. Like we would just talk for an hour. He would get his questions in and we'd talk about it, go back and forth, and just try and find something in the middle. But we wanted to do a live stream version of it and hopefully get a lot of questions and hopefully just help a lot of people get other answers too. Even if you weren't thinking about it, hopefully that did help. So there's always a reason for things about why I do things. And I try not to tell people what to do. I try to tell them how I'm thinking about it and what makes sense to me and how to just basically navigate it. But I think the best thing you can do, and this is something that me and my brother used to do, and we'd be on a phone call and I'd go for a walk and I'd be like, okay, let's go A through Z, all 32 NFL teams. And we'll start with the Cardinals. Who are the players we want on the Cardinals? And we would basically just make 2 to 3 players from each team. And then that would be our list of players to draft from. That's how we've done it for a decade. So start to think about it that way. Look at the whole team. Ask yourself, what pieces do you want from that team? What things do you want to avoid? And that's kind of a fun way to think about it. But either way, guys, I want to say thank you for hanging out with me on this Saturday evening. This was a lot of fun. We'll see you guys probably Wednesday night. I'll probably upload a video tomorrow, and we'll see you guys soon. So thank you again. Peace. Got me feeling icy.